And welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with us. Now welcoming Alex Manyasi, political analyst and governance expert, as well as Wakili Judge Kithi. Gentlemen, karibuni sana.
Thank you.
We're just taking a look at what we have on the front page of our local dailies. Let me start with the Standard. That's for Pride of the Nation. We have got Faith Kipyegon there, and of course Morale also did Kenya proud in the World Athletics, bagging gold. You can imagine what happened last week when CS Ababu Namamba was summoned to answer questions why Kenyans doing great things out there, but he's never around to receive them or even to flag them or see them off. I'm just quite curious on how things are going to be this time around. Let me start with you, Alex.
Wow. I think Kenyans have tried their best to do very well in sports. We've seen other people even change citizenship to especially the Arab world. And so sports now pays. We have a lot of Kenyans that have a lot of talent. And we need to tap into that. And beyond tapping into that, we also need to encourage them, to show them that we care. We do that in several ways, doing simple things, making sure that we make them comfortable, making sure that when they travel, we facilitate their travel, making sure that, for example, when they come back, we receive them properly and ensure that that recognition is given. Those are the small things that we can do to make sure that they stay home. They just like in the other world of brain drain, where our expats leave the country, it's the same concept. What is it that you are offering for them to stay around and not move to other countries, offer and fly their flags? So we should, as a country, be concerned when we are not treating our sportsmen and women properly. And we have seen the evidence of them doing very well. And even I want to give the Omanyala case, for example. They say that there's issues of fatigue and others. So are we even advising our sportsmen and women properly, for example, for them to keep winning? So those are things that the country should actually take up and spearhead. Yeah.
All right. I hope that's going to happen. Kithi, as we speak, you're happy to be a Kenyan at this point. Alex making us proud.
Well, in the context, yes. But I think it's a question of getting used to a situation that you lose out on what the golden goose would lay. We have, I think, a stream of production of athletes, and we've cut out a name. Probably we even have sports tourism in that context, where other athletes would come to Kenya to discover what it is in terms of infrastructure and environment that will produce many good athletes. I think it's a question of having a forest with the trees and continue to cut the trees without replenishing it and activating the facets that will produce the wood continuously.
Yes.
One day we will have people preferring to go into education because probably that's where the emphasis is. People preferring to look at other aspects because the options that are there are grinding to a halt. Like you said, I know we have had a discussion earlier, to plant sugar cane in Western is no longer a guarantee of proceeds from the sugar that comes out of it. So I think we should discover that the talents we have are not just our own, they are options. One of it is the drain where they're taken by other countries. And the other one is completely abandoning and look at other things. People get employed in the military, people get employed in the police force, and people also go to books and look to other things to do because sports no longer pay. So yes, it is very good and we should continue with our national pride, but encourage them.
Yeah.
If you are ultimately the one in leadership administratively, say the cabinet secretary, the principal secretary, and other players, you have a big responsibility, right from the talent searching when people are still underage until the time that they mature for production. So I think, yes, it's something that we should take care of.
Yeah.
We are proud as Kenyans, we are continuing to see results, but it's not enough. What is being done is not enough, and we should invest in sports. We've always been a cry and a clarion call out there to produce more stadiums and infrastructure, but we haven't.
The training grounds.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. On the front page of the Standard here, for the benefit of George and Alex, Mystery of Missing Billionaire, the family of investor Jaswant Rai reported to police about his abduction, and all attempts to know his whereabouts were met with a wall of silence. DCI grilled him last month. That is on the front page of the Standard newspaper. And according to, quote here, according to the Rai, the DCI has no justification for placing a red alert against me. I am not a criminal. I verily believe that participating in the insolvency proceedings is not a criminal offense. That is just one try. Sometimes that's according to him. On July 19th, 2023, is when he also moved to court to stop his arrest on July 19th, 2023. That's a few days ago. And now on the number of 10, the number of unknown factories associated with the businessman and his family. So, and as late as last evening, according to his lawyer, Kirokulu Kumi, he said that he was released and he was to give more details. Okay, I'll get into that story. That's going to be forming part of a discussion after this. But quickly, on the front page of the Star newspaper, Ruto gets ground for Raila Plum Office. Ruto sets ground for Raila's Plum Office. Proposed law allocates opposition chief office of 5% of political parties' funds. Proposed law allocates opposition chief's office 5% of political parties' funds. That's on the front page of the Star newspaper. And according to the deal, the president believes that a strong watchdog will enhance oversight of the executive. Let me start with you, Saoke. Where there is smoke, there is fire. And it's something that's been in the lips of many politicians for a very long time, ever since after election. And now the president talked about it yesterday. Yes, the official office of the opposition leader.
Well, I think that's a discussion that has been there for a long time in terms of trying to create what I would call a safe landing for the person who becomes second in the election. You also saw similar attempts in the previous administration of the BBI, and I think that we sort of are still in a scenario where we really do not appreciate or really appreciate the kind of law that we have or that we passed in 2010, because the leader of opposition, I'm yet to really see what his role will be, because we have a constitution that recognizes leader of majority, leader of minority, and things like that. So it will be interesting to know what will be the role of this office. Yes. But then that is on the one side. The other side is that there are also realities about stabilizing the nation, and the need to create positions for certain key political parties or key political personalities to quench political heat, so that you create safe ground for some key personalities. So I think those are also realities that exist in terms of just having a scenario where there is proper frameworks of the question of creating checks and balances for government is here neither here nor there for me, because there are already enough civil society organizations, and even some of these opposition leaders are strong enough without offices. They can keep government on toes and make government do things without necessarily having the offices. So maybe the part of creating positions for people makes more sense for me than creating a framework for holding government accountable. I think that part of holding government accountable doesn't make sense from where I sit.
I mean, you've said something quite huge, because now what will be the role of, we have the opposition, and now even that was happening. Let me quote A story here by the Star. The president spoke as it emerged that an opposition MP has drafted a far-reaching bill to establish the office of the official opposition leader. The bill also seeks to create the office of the official deputy opposition leader and provide for the funding of the two institutions based in Parliament. Now, it continues that Political Parties Amendment Bill 2023 says that the office of the official opposition leader and office of the deputy opposition leader will be funded by monies from the Political Parties Fund. Political Parties Fund. So, does it mean that we are going to go for a referendum, Alex? Because when you have to create this, does it have to go parliamentary way or popular initiative?
So I think I will choose to look at it this way.
Yes.
First of all, if you look at the lead of minority in the House, whether in National Assembly or the Senate, these are people technically who are responsible to, for now, Raila Odinga, right? So if you think about it this way, then that is someone who is out there on the streets giving direction to people sitting in Parliament. On which things to oppose governments on, which things to push for in Parliament. Now, the challenge that we have had as a country is that then you have, and I'm sure you've heard these rumors, that governors have given money to the opposition to run the affairs of the opposition. Now, what we need to then work on is ensure that the office of the official leader of the opposition has actually funding from the state. And I'm saying that because political parties have funding from the state anyway. So that if that office is run by the public, one of the things that we'll do is reduce interference of the opposition in running of our counties, because that's where the only places where the resources can be accessed from. Then secondly, you will have then a scenario where someone is officially in an office that is recognized by the country, by the government, and therefore there's harmonization of how that oversight is done, especially in Parliament. And you can monitor even how public resources are being used, because those are public resources. Now, in terms of checking government, the more people have official responsibilities with the resources from the public, the more they will need to be accountable to the public as well in terms of how they oversight the running of the executive or government. And so there are merits to trying to introduce that office. And lastly, the way I look at it is I keep imagining a scenario where Raila Odinga is not in the scene. There's an official opposition in the name of, for example, Eugene Wamalwa. What effect will he have, for instance, on ensuring that he checks government? Probably none. So you want to introduce a system where, in the absence of a powerful person, you can still have state machinery that funds an office, which can then oversight government without in ensuring that government is actually checked. So for me, changing the Political Parties Act to introduce that office, I have not looked at the constitutional provisions, but changing that will be go a long way in ensuring that you don't get someone who got almost 50% of the vote out there in the field. Atakusumbua, to be honest.
You know, you've raised a point. Look at it this way: is it about personality or the office? Because Azimio has how many leaders, or their heads? We have many of them. But Raila Odinga out of the office, just saying, maybe pushing things from the back end. I don't know what would really happen if you had somebody like Martha Karua, for example, Kalonzo Musyoka there in that office, because that office is it personality based or constitutionally based?
So it's more supposed to be more of the office than the person. And that's why I gave the example of Eugene, for example. If you removed Raila and put Eugene, will the effect be the same right now? Most likely not. And so you want to create a system where the office is strong enough and funded, so that then it doesn't matter whoever it is outside of Raila, it can still make sense. And that's the only way that oversight can happen. If you don't do that, then it will be very difficult to still get the same vibrance because see, those offices will need staff. They will need to do a bit of basic research. And how do they do that if they have no funding? And right now, probably I would imagine that most of the sources of information for Raila Odinga would be either in the police service, I wouldn't be surprised, people within the offices of government. That's where he gets his information from. But you need a system where, even without having to tap on information that is running through government, you can still do research and get information that can check government on.
Yeah. Wakili, merits and demerits of having the office, it's not there. It's not even in the constitution. But imagine it's created and you have the official opposition office funded by the political parties fund, or even the government, as the case may be. So what would really be the effect of Azimio in the long run?
Well, truth is, we make laws at times to address a situation, even if the situation is not permanent. And there's what you call the mischief rule in legislation, where you look at the problem and how to address the problem, and what then will be the result. So it's a question of the need versus the benefit, and it could be contextual. What is important here is, do we have a problem? And if we do, how do we solve it? The problem we have now is one where we have an unsettled opposition that has grievances. Of course, that grievance, for political traction, you get a cocktail of it with existential socio-economic problems of the people. But as an opposition, they have their voice of grievance that intrinsically it's a question of how they are positioned in society, in the political society, and the political situation. Now, looking at how we've legislated and we've made our constitution, and that's a question, probably reacting to the question you asked as to whether it's personality-based or office-based. Yes, some of the things in the constitution actually was reference to the actions that Moi had done, and his politics at the time. So when we say, and fast forward to what led to 2007, 2008 constitutional moment at that time. When we say you are going to be sworn between, the president will be sworn between this hour to this hour, it is a reference to an incident that we don't want to repeat it, that produced a certain result against our own existential as a society. When we say you are going to cap ministerial positions to this number, but even in that number, you must have this and this and this minister. When we say that you, as a president, must have a running mate from inception, and the running mate cannot be removed unless he commits the following offenses, is because President Moi had 1 year in this country. Without a president, then on the roadside, he appoints Professor Saitoti as his deputy, and so on and so forth. So we are reactionary in legislation, but it is working, isn't it? So even this is reactionary, because we are seeing, how do we address an opposition that is relentless in cajoling the society's peace, testing it over time and time, the elasticity of the well-being of society, yet at the same time, the part of us. Because when you're in leadership, for instance, you are for either those that supported you and that didn't support you.
Yes.
So in the circumstances, therefore, I do think that something needs to be done, although ultimately it doesn't address the issue permanently.
Yeah. Because I'm also trying to look at a situation where in the next or in the coming years they say this office of the opposition is not serving its mandate, so we need to scrap it off.
No, I think it's up for now. Did we have IPPG? Did we have laws that addressed issues and put up structures that probably eventually became what we are?
Yes.
For instance, we anchored the commissions, all those commissions that we had, Krugler and all those commissions in law first, before they had the traction. Even now, we are trying to anchor a situation where we have an office that addresses the issues we have. But the BBI, the intention of the BBI was very good until the politicians brought in their own issues. Because it intended to look at exactly who we are as Kenyans. The first fissure we have, the first division we have as Kenyans is ethnicity. And every society, whether we like it or not, must have the ethnic divisions. Even back home, the father will prefer a certain son than the other son.
Yeah.
Even in the Bible, There are some that were blessed more than the others, and others killed others because the others were more liked by others.
There's
and that's how society is.
There's nothing new under the sun.
Yes. So as we speak, democracy is a folly on its own, because it prescribes that after a cycle of 5 years, you must divide yourself on whatever division, so that you are biased towards voting for someone. So you can vote for someone because you are classmates at the university. You can vote for someone because he's your neighbor. You can vote for someone because from ethnic background. You can vote for someone because he paid school fees for your son. There's no reason that is prescribed in law that can force you to your choice, to your bias. Now, after 5 years of that bias, and obviously, like I said, our first fissure and division is ethnicity. For some reason, that's how we've been packaged. So we have either ethnic groups, ethnic community, or a group of ethnic communities coming together to form an alliance towards getting the seat. Then eventually, after 5 years, we're being told that after the voting, you have to heal and come together. So you divide, then come together. That way, then you have a group that is taken out from government and governance and its say. So that those that are in power are the ones that are seen to run the show, and that ethnic group.
I'm trying to, Saoke, when you look at it, is it meant to please the unsettled opposition?
I think it is, it's a knee-jerk reaction, as my colleagues have indicated. I wish that there was a much more sustainable solution of trying to appreciate the multi-ethnicity kind of scenario that we have in this country, and create a framework that will make, that will appease all this heterogeneous society, so that each and every person in any government feels that they're part of government. Because you know, you're going to, today is Raila Odinga, who is in the opposition, and you're going to create this position for him, and because he commands very many ethnic groups, he can appease them. In another election, you are going to have an opposition leader who does not necessarily command that heterogeneous ethnicity. Then you have a scenario where you give him that position, then the others still feel they are out of. So I think there is need for us to appreciate this heterogeneity and create a system that creates an inclusion of everybody in government. And it's an appreciation. It might look, because you see, democracy all over the world is defined by those who are governed. There is no absolute mechanism of having democracy. You define your democracy the way it fits you, the way the people feel that they are best governed. And if we will feel best governed by having a political architecture that appreciates our heterogeneity as a society, then so be it, because if that is what is able to stabilize the country, that's what we really need to look at.
Manyasi, there are two people here. We have opposition leaders, and we have the people who voted for the opposition leaders. Now, opposition chief or leaders might be okay with the deal, depending on whatever the deal may be. But the voters who voted for the opposition leader, let me take, for example, in this case, the Azimio leaders in general, with no specific person in the picture. But are the Azimio supporters keen on having this official opposition leader? Is this something they are ready to receive?
You know, let me disappoint you by telling you that for the voters especially, you only need to make sure that there's hope, unfortunately. And the more their leaders or the people that they have hope in look like they're relevant, they make sense, and they are agitating or talking about the issues that affect them, the people who voted for them will somehow be happy that at that moment in time they have hope for tomorrow. Whether that solves the problem or not, it's a discussion for another day. But that also, what it does is that it again provides a platform for conversations on the issues that affect the citizens. Whether you bring that in form of talking about the cost of living, or they will choose to talk about corruption, or they choose to talk about something else. There will always be something to talk about. Even in the US, whether you talk about, even in Israel, there's always something to talk about when it comes to people in office. When you're in the opposition, it's easy to get things to talk about. And therefore, for me, to be honest, it doesn't matter. The citizen will always wait another 5 years to make a decision. And the unfortunate bit is that most of the decisions that the voter makes has nothing to do with even the things that they keep championing. Just like what he was trying to say. Most of the time, when it comes to the voter, on the last day of voting, there will either be euphoria, there will either be this tribes thing, there will either be emotions about certain things. Just to delve much into that, Raila Odinga has never understood, for example, how to manage some of those things. For example, when there's an election and an issue like abortion comes up, people will make decisions based on that. And yet probably when it comes to that issue might only affect them in heaven and not maybe on earth, right? And so there are certain things that the voter will make decisions based on that have nothing to do with their lives. And so even as we talk about the leader of the opposition and the office and giving it money, it's a good thing because for the economy, we need stability. We need a structured way of having conversations.
Yes.
If we have conversations on the streets, then it's bad for all of us. That one, all of us must say that we can't have that. But having a structured way of dialogue, once you have an official opposition office, then it means there will be a structured conversation around what is going on in Parliament. My assumption is that there will be shadow this, shadow that, and therefore this is what we are saying government should do in terms of checking government. Although, if you think about it critically,
yes.
When we designed the 2010 Constitution, the designers introduced the fourth arm, which I call the fourth arm of government, which is constitutional commissions and offices. Those offices were supposed to oversight government. The negative side of it is that the design of it is to a large extent cannot act like the opposition. And therefore they
have the mandate and limits.
Yes. Yeah. And so those limits somehow overshadow their capacity and their ability to actually check government and be the safeguards for the citizen.
Okay. Kithi, before I take a break, a quick one. There's this statement the president said yesterday. If they want the office of the leader, if they want the office of leader of the opposition, I am ready, so that the government of Kenya funds that, so that they can issue statements from morning to evening. Two words, if they want.
Yes.
If they want, that is one. Two, so that they can keep, issuing statements from morning to evening. I don't know, what's the tone? What's the tone of that statement?
Well, I think this is my take on that. Even as we watch the discussions and listen, I think the deal is already done as to where we're heading to. And I think the deal and the agreed deal is to have an office that's funded. And so it shall be called the office of the leader of opposition. Now, the detail as to how we get there shall include the political decibels as we hear them. Both sides must be seen to have won. You can't say they went for maandamano, because that's the opposite of what he said. They went for maandamano. I think we agreed with them, and therefore, they asked for this, and we're giving them. That is one way of dealing with it. It could be the best, because then there isn't jingoism and chest thumping and all. But knowing the Kenyan politics, and those words were not meant for Raila Odinga and Azimio, they were meant for consumption of the public. They all address the public, who is the basic tool of trade in politics. So for us, we need to see in those words the content being the macho side of the Kenya Kwanza, especially the president leading it, for purposes of birthing that office. That you wanted this, we're throwing it at you as crumbs, and you can grab it if you so wish. The other side will be, we pushed wapende wasipende, we will have this office. We push them and we have the office now, which we didn't have.
Yeah.
And it's because of maandamano.
Yes.
That's why today we have this.
I'm told they need to take a break, but I'll come back and circle back with you. Is it a trap to Azimio? Because if they want to issue a statement from morning to evening, if that statement was meant for public consumption, then there is something, it's some kind of a capsule. There's a word to it. I want us to interrogate that when we come back after this break. So stay with us, much more after this. So, from where you left, who is going to benefit? Once this bill is passed, Azimio has an office, or office of the opposition leader is there. So who is going to benefit? To whose advantage?
Well, you see, politics is an industry with trappings, socioeconomic trappings of its own. And therefore, there are those that are players and those that are tools of trade for feeding politicians in their trade. Kenyans, the ordinary citizens are the ones that definitely will remain as tools of trade for purposes of the political careers of politicians. The politicians will have to look at the ecosystem existing for purposes of advancing interests. So at any table of discussion, there's the existence of the politician for the longevity of the term as is coming. For instance, there's 5 years towards the next election. What is it that we can claw away as an advantage for ourselves? And in 10 years, 15 years, what is it that we want? There's existing leader now and there are other leaders. So the dominant or at that time is how does the politician exist as opposed to how do Kenyans exist, because the dominant factor at that time is the politicians to exist. The second issue is you need then to be able to cajole and seduce the Kenyan for purposes of injecting the energy, the political energy to drive your interest. And therefore you package issues such as the price of unga, whether the government in its promises had delivered this and this and this, the cost of living, petroleum and all that. Whether factors can be controlled here or the external factors is not an issue. You need to blame and continue to blame. That way then you get fed into the political ecosystem that drives your agenda. So even on the table, as we discuss, the first dominant issue will be what positions, what gain do the politicians, especially those that are discussing gain, either are directly benefit to it, including sitting allowance in itself is a benefit. The other issue is what do Kenyans get out of it. Ultimately, when everything settles down and now there is what we derive, we get out of that, the takeaway and the cutaway shall not be Kenyans got this and this and this. It shall be what positions have we created so that the opposition has better trappings in terms of its traction towards the next election. So all this is done with a view to one, placate a certain personalities in the political environment. For the presidency, it is very important because then I've taken you from the streets, I've brought you here, I can donate to you within the context of what my environment, political environment will be and governance, a certain position that are not harmful to myself. For instance, the office of the leader of opposition is not harmful to government per se. In fact, it's better and it checks because it doesn't come with allergies without boundaries. You get the office, you get a budget. So definitely the office of the Auditor General, the EACC, DCI will have access to your activities. So you get regulated in the context. Number two, and most important, is then that which you will have done for popularism out there through mandamano and stuff. You don't do it. Now you do it within a stream of a regulated environment. You have to do a letter, you have to do a bill, you have to do certain things, and then you need also to have a formal engagement with the government.
Okay.
Suffice it to say that eventually you deformalize the most popular part of the politics, which is the streets, and bring it now to the mainstream, which is basically the government engagement.
It's just some kind of good manners to have the political hygiene that probably the president said that we need to get out
in fact,
of the
it's cleaning up
yes.
Towards political hygiene.
Okay.
Probably that's what we
Churchill, look at it this way. Raila Odinga is not the official opposition leader. I'm just imagining that, according to my Alex, is that he doesn't see any leader being in that office. But come that day, and we are here, God willing, and say that the official opposition leader of this particular office is probably Kalonzo Musyoka. I'm just imagining, could it be the reason why he's been placed to be part of the team of the bipartisan talk, so that he's privy to every detail of what's happening? What if Raila Odinga is nowhere in the picture? So his work is just to push from the backdrops.
Those are possibilities that maybe could, where the former Prime Minister stands. He's a man who's gone beyond positions, and he can be able to command the nation from wherever. It's not a secret. And I think that he does not necessarily need position to get reverence within the country and outside. And when you look at how he's what I would refer to as in other nations as a monarch, who is able to command from his palace, command the country, command the policy direction from wherever he sits. And so he might not necessarily need to have that position. He could still decide to donate it from somebody, but then he, within the architecture and the framework of engagement, he's somewhere outside there obscurely within that arrangement, without necessarily being in the arrangement. So that those are possibilities, and I think it all depends on the agreement that they have with the co-principal, or not really the co-principal but the president. They may have agreed that they create a scenario where you have the opposition leader, we are going to give it to this person, but I'll not be in government, but I will be doing this and this.
So
we are yet to see how...
a kind of a person.
Exactly.
I'm trying to look at it this way. If Alex, this sounds kind of a done deal, because if this bill is done by an unnamed opposition leader or MP, are we looking at a situation where we are just waiting for that day and come back on set and say, gentlemen, here we are. So the office is here, funded by the political parties fund. And of course, the political parties fund could be a decoy, but we never know whatever happens behind the scenes. Look at it this way. We have got Martha Karua, we have got Kalonzo Musyoka, Eugene Wamalwa, we have got former governors here. What are we looking at? The formation of that office, the deputies, the staff. So where are the rest, if at all it happens to be?
Yeah, and there are certain things that we also need to think about in this conversation, and that's the people that benefit from Raila being Raila Odinga. There are certain politicians, for example, if Raila was to exist today, they'll be having a very hard time convincing the electorate why they should exist. In government, the same thing. So politicians always safeguard their leaders based on their interests. And therefore, even this office that is being suggested, there are those that will most likely be unhappy about the office, especially if it's going to curtail their capacity to use Raila's name to remain relevant. And so, depending on how it plays out, for now, it works for government. I'm saying it works for government because the streets do not work for the ruling party or the government. They do not work because they disrupt the process of healing the nation, the process of bringing the economy back on track. But if you think about it from the extent of what, and I'll also imagine that whoever is crafting that will ensure that, for example, they are saying the leader of opposition will be this leader who is the person who is the leader of the party that garnered the second largest from whatever. That's how it's going to be drafted. Yeah. So the only other way is, for example, Raila Odinga to stop being to hand over the party leadership of the party to someone else. Then that someone else can then fit into that office. And so whether that is what he's planning, unless he's planning to retire officially, that's the only time that I see Raila Odinga doing that. Otherwise, if he's not planning to do that. And then secondly, to what I said, is the people that depend on him to survive politically might not allow that to happen. And so the politicians, the others, because then if that formation will follow Raila Odinga and Martha Karua, who was the running mate as the deputy, of course that's how it has been designed most likely. Then the others will need to find relevance, and that relevance will be determined by how Raila behaves when he gets the office of the official opposition.
But you said that Raila should retire. John Kithi looked at you like, what did you just say? Some politicians use Raila Odinga as their political campaign capital. I had a discussion with one of the Kenya Kwanza legislators. I said that, hey, mzee akienda nyumbani bana, tutaongea nini wewe? What are you saying? But look at it this way. You talked about longevity. So where will, as we come to close to this, where will this leave the whole Azimio brigade until 2027? Okay. What will be their area of operation? Of course, they having limits, the constitutional limits and what have you. And then now come 2027, fast forward to 2 months or even 3 months to election. How will it look like, Azimio? With this office in place, funded by the government also, you know, did that, because the government, I also suppose that the government will also oppose the opposition. So fast forward to 5 months to election, 2027.
Let me put it this way. I think what I like about Raila, he has probably some liberties which others don't have in terms of how he manages the population, especially his supporters. One important thing, and I'll tell you this from experience, I have run for political office myself. You are not your own at a point. There are so many interests that are cumulative in nature, and you can't abandon them from your human side, and for the fact that there is a reaction to it. For every action, there is a reaction. And therefore, you will realize that even with a brain, the best brain you have in politics, it is adulterated by those surrounding interests that you keep on referring to when making decisions, because they have been good to you at a point. And therefore, the question here will be, does Raila Odinga have unfinished business? Yes, he does. To himself, to society, to his supporters, and also to his brigade, those that are close to him. The second issue will be, can Raila Odinga disengage and then engage again towards the election? Yes, he can. He has done it before with Uhuru Kenyatta. He disengaged completely, had his time, because many things were being taken care of by government. He was almost, in fact, by de facto, he was in government. Of course, by law, he wasn't, because the deputy was the current president. But he enjoyed that moment. When he engaged back to politics, we all thought he had lost it and he was, but he had a good traction with and relationship with the population again, and it happened how it happened. The argument as to if he was out, he would have probably had more influence than if he had not associated himself with the government. It's probably a debate will not settle, because we can't know. The point remains that Raila Odinga, as it is, can still get into the office, disengage from the politics that he had already formatted in the beginning of the term for the last few months, and then come back and engage for purposes of the next election. Now, what happens then to the other leadership? They have to watch Raila Odinga and his decisions. Probably continue to cajole him to remain in politics, because, look, if he's not there, there'll be emergency of other politicians, and also the death of some political careers. So to sustain Raila Odinga, make him politically alive for the longest time possible, is to sustain political careers of certain people. There are certain governors we know in Nyanza, for instance, who are in office because Raila said they should be in offices. Not because the people wanted them, it's because if then Raila had left them alone to fight it, they wouldn't be there. And they have a duty, therefore, to funnel the political life of Raila for purpose of their own existence. Like I said, there are two issues in politics. First is the dominance of the personal interest, the one who is running into office are foremost, and then later, and of course at distance, is that then the persons, what they want, the water and the schools and all that, that becomes a distance far off from what is dominant. So what is dominant is the interest at the time. Of course, it is the interest of the top, who is Raila Odinga, and the others that come, until the MCAs down there and others that are waiting to come into the fold too.
Yeah. This topic is quite interesting, because now we'll continue to have some hypothetical questions as to what will happen. The way you've correctly put it, he can get out, disengage, and then come back, and boom, before you write him off, he's also out there. But I really want us to close this, because I'm also told that we're running out of time. But Alex, the president is in your backyard for the last 5 days. You must be happy, man. Bags of goodies are being thrown around. The sugar sector is being revived. This must be a good gesture.
This is very personal, especially when someone speaks about the sugar industry. When I went to school, my first check that was written when I was going to Form 1 to Lenana School actually came from Zoya Sugar Company. My parents had delivered Ken, and you needed to just go and confirm that Ken was delivered, and they will do an advance check for you to take to school. That does not exist anymore. Zoya Sugar, for example, holds the largest nucleus among all the sugar industries in Kenya. And yet it's among the worst performing. Zoya, unlike Mumias, which needs farmers, Zoya does not even need a farmer to continue operating. It has enough land, and therefore it can produce enough cane. The challenges are known, including machinery that is obsolete, where you use more money to repair and to service the machine than you're getting out of the machine. So you see, some of these things, now that the president is talking about them, it can quickly revive the economy of Western Kenya, especially if we can talk about the machines that are modern, that are more efficient, and also decentralize the issues of getting Zoya, for example, just to give that example, where you can nearest to the farmer, so that the farmer is not incurring a lot of cost, and probably, if possible, pre-processing, so that when the cane gets into the factory, it's not the entire thing that gets into the factory.
I also asked Churchill a question. What if it's a 50-50? County government and the national government, now that the counties hosting the factories?
For example, the Nzoia that I've given as an example, if Nzoia is almost 100%, that land was donated by the people of Bungoma. And therefore the people of Bungoma have a stake. The only worry that I have, it has to be a framework that actually works, so that it's not, because we have seen counties sometimes having challenges with management, especially when it's high-level management. And therefore that has to be, it has to be designed properly, so that then we don't shift gear and then break the gearbox in the process. We have to make sure that you engage properly, that it is designed properly, so that there's a lot of oversight in the process of running the factories. But however, the fundamental issues of writing off debt and ensuring that the factories are actually modern is more critical than handing over the factory itself.
Judge Kithi, at the end of the day, sweet, sour, sugar sector, finally almost coming to an end.
I think I think the solutions are there, and they're known. We probably have the political goodwill now that it makes political sense for it to be addressed. But I want to put it this way. It is always not advisable for government to conduct the trade itself and compete. We have, I come from down the coast, we have the problem of the Gulalu Konando there. The government did not involve the people. Of course, with its might, it was possible to run the institution and the environment, put up an ecosystem so that they produce maize, and we have no problem with the shortage of maize. But we know we had problems with shortage of maize until we were in the streets. The reason is that Gulalu was not, did not involve the people around it, and therefore it was not supported. If that is involved, including the counties, so that a robust ecosystem that taps from both local, represented as will be represented by the counties, and national government, that infusion, because technically the national government is very good at it. It has been there for now in its 60s in terms of the technical research that we've had. Number two is for sugar. I think the problem we have again is, apart from the machinery and new technology and farming, we have seasons, and therefore giving leeway for importation of sugar. But what I've seen, because I've worked in some of these parastatals that we have had researches on this and I've had access to them, is that you see we have seasons in different areas. In Ramisi, for instance, the maturity of the sugars compared to Nzoia and Mumias, the seasons are different. So that if we have that season plugged in and compensated from the south coast of Kenya at Ramisi, and part of it at the sugar belt as River Tana joins the ocean, there's a whole sugar belt there that can be and has been exploited before. You can see, therefore, that we don't have necessarily shortage of sugar in terms of the seasons, because lots of this, the adulteration of the entire sugar chemistry and distribution is always altered by the cartels that want to import sugar on the guise that the sugar shortage in terms of season production, production. But if we had all this tapped in, and therefore we have an entire ecosystem, right from the western to the coast and areas that can produce sugar, I think it's possible to sustain sugar production in this country for the entire financial year. Suffice it to say that eventually it's probably possible. We have an entire infrastructure and environment in this country to address the sugar issue once and for all.
And just leave politics out of it. Exactly.
But again, there are people who need to make money out of it and create those challenges so that they import the sugar. The sugar importers benefit more than the farmers, than the sugar industries themselves.
I had to leave Churchill because Churchill started this conversation. Now we have to leave it at that particular point. You'll have to forgive me for that. No, but they have to get an opportunity. You said it was personal for you, Alex Manyasi. Your first paycheck joining Lenana because of sugarcane.
Yes.
Let's just hope that at the end of the day something will happen. But very quickly, in 20 seconds, as we usually do, what do we have on the front page of this is what we have on the front page of the BBC. Protests erupt in Libya over contact with Israel. That's updated 14 minutes ago. Libya's foreign minister is suspended because of talks with Israel, which Tripoli does not recognize. Now, that's another story that is happening. Militia battles rock Libyan capital around airport. Israeli fast-growing trade ties with UAE, and now Libya country profile. That is happening here. And finally, the crocodile. The gentleman is back. Emerson Mnangagwa, re-elected Zimbabwe leader. He had a quick one, 52, almost 52 point something percent. According to, he first, exactly, at 100 rocketed, let me just get the correct figure there. It was around 52 point something percent of the total votes, which was, cast over the week, and now he's now 8 years old. That is as far as that's concerned. And finally, on the front page of Friday 24, obstacle course for the disabled. Can Paris transport be made accessible in time for Olympics? All right. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. George Kithi, Wakili, Alex Manyasi, political analyst and governance expert, and Churchill Saoke, as well as me, just truly, Victor Oloo. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
And you as a viewer, thanks for watching. Let's take a break. GMK continues short after this. Good morning.